MU says more than 500 positions are now open in faculty and staff. The students who usually sit in these seats have their sights set on the Final Four. The Women's Network stresses the name of their program as changing the odds. Secret Service is investigating a Columbia business. They wanted to know what drugs and how much of them were in Nancy Dugent's body when she died. That'll help them determine if this is a murder investigation. Storytelling is folklore, but folklore is so much more.
What are you working on right now?
It's life passed down. Folklore is culture in action, always evolving. Missouri is full of folklore, anything passed down by experience rather than formal education. You can learn about storytelling in school, but you can't become a storyteller without having someone to look up to.
Okay.
I realized my great-grandmother disciplined us with stories, and the stories she disciplined us with were folk tales.
These children are experiencing one of Missouri's best.
We try to do what we can when we find out what our special gift is, to right in the corner where we are. As people who were connected to a much larger environment, a much larger community from the past, the present, and the future.
From the future back to the past, these folks are sharing in two traditions, one from old Europe and one from the Old West.
The fiddle is a state instrument of Missouri. And what's the difference between a violin and a fiddle? Well, as it sits on the shelves at the music store, no difference. But all the difference in the world depending on who's got it and what she's doing with it.
I'm a completely by-ear musician, so I pretty much taught myself just through trial and error and listening to a lot of fiddle music, but I had the advantage of having recordings to listen to.
It's unusual to learn from recorded music, but Paul and his wife Wynn have inspired and taught folk music to their daughters. They make sharing folklore a whole family affair. Contra dancing is a lot like square dancing, and that's a whole community affair.
And contra dancing's been going on for probably at least 300 years. It started in England and France, and they did it in pretty much the same formation that we do now. Dances were a lot simpler back then, and they weren't quite as vigorous as we do them now.
Quilting's a little quieter. It's another cultural leftover from the pioneer tradition, but it's evolved quite a bit. In the pioneer tradition,
quilting is a way of using scrap material, little scraps that are too small to be good for anything else.
Quilting has evolved into an art form. Sewing machines and bought fabric replace scraps and hand-sewn squares, but it's still a tradition.
My friend and I had been in quilting for just a couple of years, and we thought that was pretty funny that we could teach anybody anything, but we decided, sure, we'd do that. And in fact, we teach the ladies how to piece a Missouri Star block, thinking there'd be a lot of interest for Missouri Star. Some of our older women in their 70s and 80s, were exposed to handwork growing up. Probably they made clothes for their children. Anymore, people don't make clothes for their children.
Times may have changed, but the one constant in all these forms of folklore has been community. People sharing their culture with each other as folklore, alive right here in mid-Missouri. Mark Poepsel, KOMU News, Columbia. These workers are getting paid to wait. About 75 workers sat for hours outside the Cargill turkey processing plant in California, Missouri. They're waiting to get back into the plant to get their belongings after an ammonia leak.
Well, we got in, and they said there was an ammonia leak, and so they got us out to the cafeteria, but the smell got kind of bad, so they had to get us out of the building. That's the normal routine.
The plant practices safety procedures most Saturdays, but even after a potentially dangerous leak, Garcia says he still feels safe on the job.
First time it happened since I've been here. 2 years now. First time.
The smell of ammonia is gone now, and workers say here at Honeysuckle White their turkeys are safe, and they'll be throwing away any turkeys that were exposed to ammonia. The company says the amount of ammonia that leaked was under the reportable limit, but no one would appear on camera. This trucker is leaving with an empty trailer. He'll have to wait until tomorrow to move any turkeys. Many of these live turkeys were outside the plant at the time of the leak, but one Cargill worker says they're safe to use. Mark Poepsel, NBC8 News, California, Missouri.
The company uses ammonia refrigeration for the turkey packing process.
Zoo Crew is the Mizzou Student Basketball Fayette Club. They usually sit in these seats behind me, but with a win tomorrow, they'll be seated in the Georgia Dome at the Final Four. The road to the Final Four has been a real journey for the Tigers this year, where once fans could only dream. Zoo Crew members are banking on a win tomorrow and hoping for the chance to spend the end of their spring break with the Tigers in Atlanta for the Final Four.
I had actually already booked hotel reservations prior to last night's game. It's kind of taking a risk there too because they're not refundable either.
Fans know it will take a big win over Oklahoma, but they've seen big wins all week.
Last night, I think, it was the feeling was like we were at the game. Everybody was cheering. We were cheering when we were on defense. We were cheering, "Let's go Tigers," as if we were there and they can hear us. They probably did because we were loud as hell. It was awesome though.
Zoo Crew co-director Mark Bresnahan gets a call from MU's marketing director with ticket plans for Atlanta. Students might have as many as 500 tickets available, and with a Tiger win, these guys and 40 of their closest friends could take a bus to Atlanta next Friday. They're not the only fans planning to head to Atlanta. I talked with travel agents today who said they're making their own plans for different travel packages. Back to you. Determine if this is a murder investigation.
We need to see if there is something to solve. If you know, something was done accidental, if it was a homicide, we're still piecing that together.
Police have questioned a suspect who may have requested painkillers using Dugent's name.
We have an indication who might have done it, but at this point, we want to make crystal clear and make sure that we have all of our facts and everything in place.
Police say when the imposter didn't get the drugs, those painkillers went to Dugent's nursing home and she received 2 doses that may have killed her. Investigators expect toxicology reports to come back from a St. Louis University lab in 2 weeks. Those reports will tell police for sure if the painkillers killed Dugent. Then they'll know what kind of charges they need to bring, if any, against the suspect. Now, in a separate investigation, the state's Department of Health and Senior Services decided that the nursing home wasn't at fault in the delivery of drugs to Nancy Dugent.